So welcome to the Global Discussion, discussions with creatives, leaders and thinkers. Today, I'm joined by Bobby Umar. Bobby, you're very welcome to the podcast. And let's begin by asking you to introduce yourself to our international audience.
Sure. My name is Bobby Umar. I am a professional speaker by trade. For the last 17 years, I've traveled around the world and delivered 1,000 keynotes and workshops across 4 continents, mostly on the areas of leadership and development. But over the years, my expertise has been in the areas of networking, building authentic connection, on personal branding for clarity, purpose, and direction, and digital presence, digital marketing, leveraging LinkedIn, Twitter, social audio. And now I talk about mostly thought leadership. And within that, there's lots of things like speaking, confidence, mindset, storytelling, all those types of things. And I've done 5 TEDx talks. And now what I do is I go into companies and I basically teach them how to be thought leaders, work on their brands, work on their content, working on their storytelling and speaking. But also I do work with individuals on specifically getting clarity on their personal brand and then elevating themselves to a thought leadership brand, which will then lead to more clients, more business, more speaking, media, books, TED Talks, you name it. So that's kind of what I'm focused on.
Thank you, Bobby, for that explanation. And it's quite a journey. And, you know, you're speaking to thousands of people. You mentioned the TEDx talks. You're a 5 times TEDx speaker. You're a thought leader in your own right. You share an awful lot of information around the world. But something that you just mentioned there that I'd like to maybe go back to, which is this personal brand. And then you've kind of got the company and its brand. And it's been fascinating to watch, particularly in more recent times, how personal brands have become really, really important in business, whereas maybe a decade or 2 ago, nobody was really talking about a personal brand. You might have had a charismatic business leader, but today a lot of people have a personal brand, don't they, as well as working for a company or a brand. And that is translating into this increased revenue, increased engagement, increased reach. Can you maybe unpack that a little bit more and why that's so important today?
Well, I mean, the thing with personal branding is that it's your reputation, it's your integrity, it's how people experience you and remember you. So are you a tyrant or are you a lovable, supportive person? You know, and now in the digital landscape, you know, if a boss is being a total jerk about it, there's going to be tweets and posts about it on every platform, you name it. So, you know, so now I think that leaders are being exposed for their authoritarian and terrible behaviors that are out there, which is why I think digital is a good thing now to expose those things. But at the end of the day, like your personal brand, your reputation and how you make people feel follows you forever. Your work at a company may only be temporary, right? So that's why your brand is important to work on, how you are as a person, how people see and perceive you, what they love about you, what they know about you, what they can expect from you. This is going to pass on from company to company to company, but it'll be with you the rest of your life. And so that's why it's important to build on that, because when you do that, you create greater trust, greater familiarity, better memorability, and that leads to lots of awesome things, including, you know, more business leads and better job opportunities and things that come your way. And so that's why I always focus on the personal brand piece, because that's the individual on you. And everything else is just, you know, part of that overall brand. There's the personal brand of Bobby, and everything else feeds into it. I have my 3 companies that feed into it. I have my life as a dad, as a husband, as a son, as a friend, that will feed into the overall brand of Bobby.
Yeah. And what about, so thank you for that, Bobby. And what about thought leadership in its own right? Because lots of people want to be thought leaders, and some companies think they're actually thought leader type brands. But when you talk about thought leadership, what exactly are you drilling down to? What's the core essence when you think of how you would articulate what good thought leadership actually is?
Well, you know, there's a famous expression saying that a personal brand is what they say when you're not in the room. In other words, people talking about you because you have a reputation. Thought leadership branding is what they say before you enter the room, while you're in the room, and also when you leave the room, because the idea is that as a thought leader now, you are a known expert authority in your field, in your industry. When people think about a certain topic, your name comes up, and you're constantly creating content, innovating new ideas, you're working on your speaking, you're building followers, you're building community. And that's the big difference. The big difference between the ones who are, you know, just have a clarity in their personal brand versus the ones who are thought leaders, the ones who are actually making an effort to help others and build community and share knowledge and to evolve and move people along this path for their expertise or industry. And so when you think of thought leaders, that's what they're doing. They're driving conversation. They're the ones who are being thought of. And not everybody wants to be a thought leader, and that's fine. You don't have to be. You know, you may want to plug away and do your work as a doctor, a lawyer, or a shoemaker, and that's fine. But if you want to set yourself apart and start getting extra things beyond just the job itself and create that legacy impact that is memorable, then I think building a thought leadership goes a long way.
And where does networking fit in, Bob? Because I know you speak quite a bit about networking,
Yeah.
and you do a lot of networking yourself, both in real life and in this digital realm that we're all finding ourselves in. And when you talk about networking, historically, people, I think, still visualize a room handing out a business card, etc. But we've got so many tools at our disposal now. So when you talk about networking today, it's a very different landscape, isn't it?
Well, it's changed, right? I mean, I wrote a book on how to network anywhere, anytime with anyone, but that was for live events, right? And now there's Zoom calls, now there's webinars, now there's Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever. There's a digital space. And so learning to, I mean, at the end of the day, we're trying to cultivate meaningful relationships with people. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are going to do business with you. They're the ones who are going to hire you. They're the ones who are going to promote you. They're the ones who are going to want you to come to their event and speak and things like that. So that's really what it's all about. And when I think about leadership, right, there's three main things everyone does. They build connections, broad relationships, deep relationships, and followers. They share ideas and innovate with content and creating stuff and posts and podcasts, whatever it may be. And number three, they're always working on their speaking and storytelling with videos and written work and all that kind of stuff. And so relationship building is one of the core three foundations of building a thought leadership brand.
Yeah. And that relationship building and that engagement, because we've seen a lot of it move online, because we had to move online when you think of things like the global pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in your view, and I've asked this question to a few people, but because you are a keynote speaker, you're very used to being at an event and speaking on a stage. What's your view on the type of relationships that you can build in a digital only world versus the in real life world? How do you see those two? Are they completely different? Are they pretty much the same and you can build the same meaningful, engaged relationship? Or do you, I think that you would lean towards, an in real life because you're a keynote speaker too.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite thing is to be in real life, whether it's speaking on stage in person. I love that way more than virtual. But at the end of the day, we do what we can with digital, try to create as much connection we possibly can, right? So doing a live video chat or doing an audio room is one of the best ways to build that authentic connection and trust. I mean, if grandma lives 3,000 miles away, then we used to do Skype and Zoom and FaceTime to have that connection with the kids. And because it's the best way to do it in the absence of being there in person. And so what I would say is that, when it comes to your digital strategy, finding as many ways to have that video touch point and an audio touch point goes far better than just having the text touch point. Not saying you can't do it. I mean, I could DM people and get to know them quite well over just messages back and forth. But at the end of the day, you want to try to get them visually on a Zoom call with you one-on-one, because that's where there's greater connection with that person.
And we're talking about the tools here a little bit and the digital connection. Now, for those people that may not know, you're also a big proponent and a large user with a big following and an engaged audience when it comes to social audio. Mm-hmm. So whether that's Clubhouse or Twitter Spaces or LinkedIn or whatever. Mm-hmm. Could you maybe just share a little bit about the type of activities and what you host on social audio and why you think and why you invest time there?
Well, so what I've found from social audio that is different than all other social media platforms is that for some reason, it creates much greater trust with the people in the room. So when I do a live stream, it's my personality. People see that, but sometimes they're like, oh, he's this big guy speaking and I can't really get on stage with him. And so, there's that one-to-many relationship that's pushed out with a live stream. Same with the podcast, one to many pushed out. Um, but what's interesting is that with an audio room, it's democratized podcasting, which means that everyone can come up on stage, everybody can share a thought, and they feel closer to you. And so that to me is a big difference with social audio compared to everything else. I mean, if you could have a live stream where anyone can join you, like on the video, and you're chatting like a Zoom call, that could be the same thing. It's very, very similar. And that's why when I have my Thought Leadership Brand Club, when we have our weekly calls, we have a Zoom call, and everyone's there talking. That works really well too. But I think that social audio has that special, authentic, audible voice that goes a long way to building that trust. And the other thing I found with social audio, which is really fascinating, is that it's the only social media platform where I've been able to sell directly to people on the call. So what that means is, when I post on LinkedIn about my course, no one pays for it right there. When I tweet about it, no one pays for it. They want to either go to a landing page, be part of an email marketing funnel, or go to your webinar. Like, in order to sell anything, you either have to have a call with them, or meet them in person for a coffee, or they're part of some sort of webinar or some sort of event that you're there, and then there's the upsell or an email marketing campaign over like 5 emails. But on social audio, particularly on Twitter Space and Clubhouse, I've been able to say, look, I'm running this thing next week. It's $200, and after an hour, people sign up just like that. I've never seen that before in any other social media. The general rule had always been social media is for awareness building, and then email marketing and live and is for the selling piece. But that's another thing about social audio, which I think is really unique.
Yeah, that's a very helpful insight. Thank you for sharing that, Bobby. The last thing I want to ask you on this topic is, we've heard an awful lot of headlines about the metaverse, and various companies are investing heavily in it. And at the moment, we're kind of in a Web 2.0, heading to Web 3.0, who knows? But what about the impact of, I suppose, virtual networking or the advancement of AI? There's a lot of talk at the moment around things like ChatGPT and the next evaluation of content being produced by AI. Does that sort of impact you in any way? How are you thinking about things like virtual environments for speaking or for content?
Well, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, there's always going to be people that want to have that in-person connection, right? I mean, a common complaint of Facebook/Metaverse is that when there's an issue, you send a message and then there's no one to talk to, and people don't like that. Even when the telling machines came up, there's some people still like to go to the bank teller and talk to the bank teller. So in-person connection will always be there. But it is going to change and shift in terms of how often and frequent it is. At the same time, there is a lot of benefits to AI, and it keeps us on our toes to get better and better all the time. But I also believe that even if let's say you're doing AI as part of your content strategy and using it to post on LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter, at the end of the day, at some point, someone's going to want to talk to you or talk to a person if they're going to do business with you. I think that certainly it's a great way to advance your strategy. But like for example, there's websites where there's a chat function, and you press one of this, or you should press two, and I'm doing that. But eventually, it gets to the point where they can't help me. And say, okay, I'm going to connect you to a person. And so I think that AI is definitely helping us innovate, be better. But long term, the in-person connection will still be even more meaningful than that AI connection.
Very good. Well, look, we've talked a lot there about people's personal brands, about networking, about engagement, and a little bit about technology. And I'm interested, for somebody who speaks all over the world, and for somebody who is a thought leader, when you take on information yourself, Bobby, do you like audiobooks? Do you read books? Are you searching the internet for information? Is there any particular genre of book, whether it's reading for pleasure or reading for business? Where do you fit when it comes to taking on board information?
It's a good question. I think my favorite way to take on information is to book calls with people. So let's say I want to learn about, some sort of topic. I'll meet someone for a coffee or a Zoom call, and I'll just talk to them about stuff and ask. I learn by listening to people and having conversations. So a lot of my knowledge I've gained over the years has been through those conversations. So I have a friend who's an expert in, actually one of my friends is an expert in TikTok. And when I launched on TikTok, is, hey, let's book a call. And I talked to her and got some information from her. So that's one way. The second way, I'm a huge video content creator, but I'm also a video content consumer. So video is just an easy way for me to listen and learn. And then I'd probably say the third way is articles. I do like, reading an article here and there. In my morning routine, usually there's some articles that come my way. If they're video based, I'd like that even more. But sometimes I read articles. I think those are probably the big ways. I've often not been a book reader. People often ask me, recommend books, and I'm not really that much of a large book reader. Except for my kids, I read books to my kids. But for me, I'd say the conversations, video content, and articles are probably the three biggest ways in which I learn about things. That's right. The fourth one is just doing it. Like, I just started TikTok a month ago, and I'm just getting there and I'm doing it and learning as I go along. I mean, that's how I learned Twitter and LinkedIn back in the day.
Yeah, I love that answer, because there's not many people will say, when I ask that question, there's not many people will actually say, well, if I want to learn something, I'll book a call with somebody who knows a bit more about it than I do.
Yeah.
And it's such a, well, of course, but we don't necessarily do that.
That's the power of networking. Like, I have a network that I can go to and ask, hey, you want to do a call? Because I want to ask you a couple of questions.
Yeah. I love that. I had somebody who has said to me, well, I like listening to a podcast by an expert on a particular subject, and I'll get the transcription, then I'll think about it, absorb the information. But I love that answer. Thanks, Bobby. Now, the other question I've got for you is, throughout your career to date, there must be people that you admire, people that you've looked up to, or people that have inspired you along the way. Is there anybody that springs to mind when I mention that, either from a personal or a business capacity?
Sure, there's lots. I mean, the two that always come to my mind are Brené Brown, for the discussion on vulnerability and shame and emotional connection and all that kind of stuff. I think that's really powerful. And then Gary Vaynerchuk, for just his attitude of hustle and entrepreneurship and kindness. I think those are really, really powerful things that I think move me. And then the other people that inspire me, honestly, are some comedians. Just because they're funny, but they're knowledgeable. They're advocates for social justice and change. So when I listen to people to Hassan Minhaj or John Oliver or Stephen Colbert, I love Jon Stewart. These are all just amazing, brilliant minds who are sharing great knowledge about the most important issues of our day, and I find that to be extremely empowering and exciting to hear them. So those are probably the ones that come to my mind.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, when you say comedians, because when you actually look at it harder, they're great observers of human life, the human condition and culture, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great.
Yeah, and they can express it in a fun way, but also in a very concise way, which a lot, like, they just take very, very complicated things and break it down to one or two things. Because the thing about the joke, what's the key thing, and they can bring it down to one. Trevor Noah is also very good at that. Just takes a very complicated issue. Here's the one thing I see. Boom. I love that. I think that's just fascinating how they can do that.
Oh, that's very good. Thank you. The other question I've got is about advice. Now, this can be something you were told as a child, or it could be something you were told literally a few hours ago. Is there any advice that has stuck with you that you think, do you know what, I'm hanging on to that? That's excellent advice. Or do you find yourself offering a certain type of advice on a consistent basis to people that you think people should know or be aware of?
Well, I mean, I think that, the number one advice I got from my dad was that he always say, there is no tomorrow. And the way I take that is like, do it now. Get it done. Why wait till tomorrow? Get it done now. And number two, be in the moment when you're there. So he may not have meant that at the time. I think he wanted me to go out and shovel the driveway. But, I think that there's great knowledge there. And so in doing so, I take that to heart. Like, I typically am very responsive. Most people know that when people text me or message me, I respond very, very fast. I get it done now. I'm really big on that. So, but that relates to the other piece, which is, the people who are struggling to just start, put it out there. You never know what's going to happen. Like, I think that ask for help. A lot of people don't want to ask for help, but if you're having trouble, ask for help. And then the last thing I'll say is there used to be this thing on Coca-Cola and pop bottles or soda bottles that said no deposit, no return. What that means is you would have to, you put a deposit down, you bring it back, and they give you a quarter or 10 cents or whatever it might be. And so, but that's a philosophy for life. If you don't deposit, you're not going to get a return. So investing in yourself and investing in others will reap its own rewards, and you'll get return on that. So it's important to have that deposit in yourself and as well as in other people. So those are
I,
probably my thoughts.
I love that, Bobby. That's great. That's something that's sticking with me for sure. Thank you. Look, before we wrap up, I don't want to run out of time. And I want to ask you if there's anything else that we haven't touched on that maybe you want to share as we think forward. At the time of recording this, we're kind of heading into a new year. We've got a lot of months ahead of us. What are you hoping to achieve in the next year? I know you've got a talented musical family. The children are doing their thing. I see some of that in the Bobby Umar brand online. But what are you focused on? What are you thinking about over the next 12 months? And is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is health and wellness. I mean, it's something I've struggled with my whole life. And so, just yesterday we had a family meeting with the kids to start a 30-day accountability. We're going to be doing every day this month for 30 days, a plank and a wall sit, and just to see how we can improve. And I think that that journey to me is really important. I'm always, now that we're coming out of the pandemic, I want to get back onto a better, more healthier lifestyle for myself and my family. I think that's a big one. The second thing is the trend around multi-platform investment. I mean, I started on TikTok. I have now the LinkedIn, Twitter, Clubhouse, and Instagram integration that I'm doing. And I'm also trying to teach other people to do the exact same thing, because I think that you don't want to stick to one platform. I think you can have one primary, but you want to have the other ones as well. And then the third thing is, honestly, I can't wait to do more speaking. Missed it like crazy. It's slowly coming back. I just booked a speaking gig a couple of days ago. Okay, great. That's one. Let's just keep going. Let's get back. The world's changed. I don't expect to do as many as I used to before. But if I can get back to at least a certain level where I'm able to do those things, particularly international travel, I haven't gone anywhere internationally for 3 years. So for me, getting back, like I was doing a speech every year in Tunisia. I used to love that, or in Poland. If I can get back to those again, I'd love to do those again. But for me, the speaking live in person at events around the world, I'm looking forward to getting back to that as well.
That's great. That's great. And I suppose the last thing, Bobby, if people want to find your stuff online, where are you sending people to these days? I know you're on most platforms, but what's the best way for people to reach out or to find your stuff?
Yeah, I mean, the best ways to find my stuff are, honestly, you can Google me because I'm everywhere. But generally speaking, you can follow my profile on LinkedIn or my company page on LinkedIn. You can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on Instagram. Those are the main ways in which people can follow me from a business perspective. From a personal perspective, I've started on TikTok, so I'm always looking for followers there. So come check that out. But that's more personal stuff. I share stuff with my kids, like and stuff that amuses me. But yeah, I mean, I'm everywhere. But those are the main ones.
Well, listen, that's a great note to end on. Thanks very much, Bobby, for sharing all those wonderful insights and a little bit about Bobby Umar with us today. It's been a pleasure to have you here on the Global Discussion. I want to thank both Bobby and everybody who's watching or listening to this episode. We want you to like, follow, subscribe, do all the usual things that you do with a podcast. And hopefully you'll join us back here again for more discussions with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. Thank you, Bobby. It's been a pleasure to catch up again.
My pleasure too. Thanks, Simon.